All right, all right. Welcome, good people of planet Earth. My name is Tylon U. Xavier Washington, and today is July the 11th. I'm here in New York City, and it's 6:13 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It may be different because our panelists are from all over the nation, and they are here at Daddies Matter Too. That's right, because daddies absolutely matter. It's kind of interesting that we even have to do a show, right? Like say daddies matter. You would think, that's right, daddies matter. There's no need to do a show. But Brenda, tell them why we're doing the show.
This show is a platform built to be the microphone or a microphone inside of the world of fatherhood. It is a voice that is so often muffled, uh, made to be quiet in a world where it is the one and only thing that I've seen that is still stressing people out to this day, stressing families out, stressing mothers out, stressing the kids out. So I, Brenda Brown, one day said, you know what? I'm going to do my part. I can't do it all, but I can do my part because daddies matter too. And we're not anti moms, we're just pro dads, giving fatherhood a microphone. Very simple, but that's all there is to it, Tyler. I guess he can't hear me. He had to go out, and now I see twins. Well, welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Daddies Matter Too, where the fatherhood opinion is the opinion of the hour. And we want to welcome you here if you are a father or could be a father or will be a father one day to express your opinions. Shout out to Dr. Ron. How are you, sir? It's good to see you or not see you.
I'm sure he's doing a million things. He's juggling right now.
They are always Ron Weber. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's good to be here. Always is. Doing well.
It's always good to see you and your fatherhood. Brother Blake, how are you, sir?
I'm very well this evening there. Just coming outside to chill out from my grandkids upstairs. So I got my daughter. I'm doing dad and granddad job today, but I decided to come outside.
Right on. Well, thank you for joining us here. It's all about you. Fatherhood is that kind of way. It's not straight on the straight and narrow. It's all different kinds of ways. So we welcome you here to show us your way. Will McCrae, are you there?
Will might be listening in. Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. Lakota, are you there? Might be listening in. Ernest, are you there?
Hello, my lovely sister. Hello, Tylon. Hello to all the other fellow panelists.
Hello.
Out there and those men that aspire one day to experience fatherhood or just be a daddy to any of those around.
There you go.
That's what's going on. Now, Tylon, we've gathered here all to this one little Zoom meeting. And we haven't asked you, how are you doing?
Well,
today.
Every day above ground is a good day, especially now with all that's going on. We got a variant running out here. We have the crime, and then it's all this unrest and racial tension and all the other good stuff. I mean, I'm just grateful to be a part of this incredible level of consciousness, whatever it is. and to be able to communicate with you and other people and try to bring people together, families together, and just give another perspective. I said something interesting, Brenda. I don't know if you agree or disagree, and we could talk about it. Like, there's a need. There's a very real need to do a Daddy's Matters too, and I think that speaks volumes. That we have to do, in a sense, a show like this. What say you? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, because
Hmm.
it's the voice of fatherhood. Like, I want I don't want to hear my voice, right? Because I live in a world where I hear voices that sound like mine.
Mm.
They
Mm.
match my opinions,
Hmm.
they match my energy because we are women, we are mothers,
Right.
right? So there's
Right.
a lot of that around me.
Hmm.
So I like to hear the opinion of, say, Rob Weber. How do you feel, Rob? Do you think there needs to be shows like this? What's going on?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, uh, as somebody who's been in a situation where there is no voice, it feels like that very much so as a man for sure, and as a father for sure. It feels like there is no voice. So absolutely pivotal. We have platforms like this where we can speak for sure. Yes.
Ooh, I love it. Brother
Hmm.
Blake, what say you?
Yep, I'm going to piggyback on that. It is important because not only am I a father and a grandfather, but I'm also a mentor to a couple of twins in the foster care. So, when
Wow.
parents give up their parental rights for children, we have to step in the gap. So, I kind of venture out. And
Hmm.
I think it's so important because we never know what some of these kids that go to school all the time go through. They're not coming from
Right.
homes, they're
Right.
coming from foster homes. And
Right.
to see the challenges that they have, and when your parents give up your parental rights, they've already facing rejection. So
Right.
it's crucial out there, and I'm glad to be a part and doing the best that I can. And I look forward to this organization right here. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Oh, well, welcome. See,
Welcome.
Thailand, we
Hmm.
can make friends all over the
I
fatherhood.
love it. The follow, and where you're from, Blake? What state you want to rep or city?
I'm here in Miami, Florida. Miami.
Wow.
Whoop,
Okay.
whoop.
Woohoo.
Shout out. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I always like to start out with some really kind of fun things
Okay.
because things go across my path and I'm like, good dad, bad dad, right? And so I love to see the headlines. And I love that fatherhood is kind of making a comeback, right? Fatherhood is starting to appear more and more often in our headlines. And I think I'm okay with that. So I'd like to start with this. And it's one, conservatorship of Brittany. Now, take everything else out of it. Her father, do you think he's really doing the best for her that he thinks that there could be? Because he's a father, so it might not look the same to mothers, or it might not look the same to the public as from a father. So what say you, Tylon?
um, you know, I don't know enough about Britney Spears. I don't know if I care enough, to be honest. I mean, she's
Oh.
rich. I mean, I'll be honest. But it
Well, here,
what,
let me fill
yeah,
you
yeah,
in.
give
Her
me.
dad is her conservator, and he's been keeping a hold of her money over the past 13 years. And he's been trying to help his daughter out because she's been kind of experiencing some mental health problems. And
Mm,
so they are now saying he is taking her money from her and holding her in sort of like a bondage work situation. And they're giving him really bad press about it as a dad. As a mom, they wouldn't have ever blinked twice. But as a dad, he is getting sold up the river. So I was wondering, do you think that as a dad, he really should stand tall for his daughter and say, I'm doing the best thing for her?
I mean, in general, I would say yes. I mean, I'm pro dads, and I think the experience and wisdom of dads are important. But I don't know this man, and when there's a lot of money involved, I know sometimes lines can be blurred from the roles that you might want to play and the roles that might keep you in the roles.
And it's
You know, in
interesting
the
that
Rolls
you
Royce. So
say that
mhm,
you don't care because these
mhm,
are the social media images of fatherhood at this point. So you know, if there's any show that should care what it looks like out there, I
mhm.
would think that Daddy's Matter 2 would be one of them. Welcome, Ron. I see
Well,
you.
let me hold on. Let me clarify that, right? I don't care because she's rich, you know, and the type of problems that, let's say, dads like Rob and myself and other things that you know, the system, it was not designed for us. You know, I believe that and I stand on that. So when you hear this very privileged person having issues, I kind of don't feel like I have a horse in that race. I care more about child support and how those rules weigh heavily against the community and against men, which we talk about. So it's not that I don't care about, you know, men who are trying to do the right things for their daughters or even their sons and just family in general and having a voice in court. We already know that we don't get the same shake or the same standing as folks who are rich and white. So, so that's why
Well, let's
I'm
see.
like,
Different opinions may vary. Rob Weber,
yeah,
do you have you heard about that story? I'm sure you have. You're out on the social media highways. Is
Uh,
Brittany's dad being good dad, bad dad?
uh, Again, you know, I don't have these multi-million-dollar problems like that. Like,
yep.
oh, my bazillionaire talented child has some problems here.
Hmm.
Uh, from a couple of perspectives, can I understand it? Absolutely. I mean, you've got a history of, you know, oh my goodness, you know, poor Leave It to Beaver there. His parents took all his money or so and so, you know, so you do have that stereotype. You also have, it could be, on the flip side of that coin, this guy wants to see his daughter succeed, and when she does eventually, you know, get her poop in a group there and want to go out in the world and be an adult, she'll have some money to do that. So, do I think he's being bad? No, I think he's protecting an investment. And there's also a time where it becomes a business, and I think that's kind of the blurred line that Talam was speaking of as well. You know, like, do I care? A little bit.
No, not yeah. I mean, as a dad, it's what's out
Yeah,
there. But good point, Rob. I love it. Now, Blake, whether you know Brittany here or not, or have rich people problems, it's just the fact that in public, moms like myself, they wouldn't have blinked twice if
no,
we were the conservators of our daughters and we for this long. But now they are wanting to put her dad in jail and she's trying to put him there.
yeah.
And do you think he's acting in a good father? If this was your daughter, would you hold on to the conservatorship or let her fly?
Uh, at some point in your life, I can't remember how old she is. She's in her 30s, I think. She's 30 something now. You
Hmm.
know, I'm sure he has to come to a point where sometimes, like my father used to tell us, you make the bed, you got to lie in it. You know, I
Mm.
mean, she put herself in whatever position she's in, and sometimes you have to fall. But if you're trying not to let a child fall, then you defeat the purpose of seeing the child grow. You know, if you don't actually, sometimes you have to fall. Sometimes you have to fall flat on your face to kind of figure out what life's really all about. And if he's trying to avoid something that he probably just can't avoid because it may happen later on, it doesn't matter, you know. And I think it's just important. Maybe just let it go. And I think it's about money, and maybe he might get cut out of it. Yeah, I
Mm.
think that too, that he might get cut out of that
Hmm.
something. If he lets go of that, she gets her money, then he won't get any of it.
That works. I love the different opinions. Ron, should he just, bow down and say, I'm not doing what's best for my daughter and let her mom and the social people and everybody butt in on what he feels is best for his daughter?
I would have to first agree with Talon. This is not. Uh, this is again what we do to distract ourselves from our real issues that affect us. But if you want me to speak about this, I will, mainly because Britney Spears was a child actress who parents put her in that. So the question really comes back to the parenting before she even attained the wealth. And so part of that is this was a child that we made into a cash cow, and at many points this has become our cow that we need to keep. That's a parenting issue, not just for the father, but for the mother as well, because they both benefited from. It just so happens that in the structure of their family, the father is the one. In many of these families that we understand are the ones who manage that. So I think that when I look at it with clear eyes, it's a family issue involving a father who then we might be looking negatively on, but is a whole family structure that's there that needs to be evaluated. And again, I mean, again, a father who is, I think I agree so much with Thailand, a father who is looking for a child, trying to survive and pay child support, or just
Mhm.
even getting to see his child. This is not something that he even cares about because
Right.
it's not even realistic to him. That's their problems. My problem
Mhm.
is I don't even have no money. I don't even got a child that makes any money. I mean,
Mhm.
my money is providing for, just to keep me alive.
Right.
And hopefully, and the state is taking a lot of that. So I think
Yeah.
that
Yep.
Well, it's not all that if we agree or disagree or come here. It is for to uncork the cork of fatherhood. And
Mhm.
some things are light and funny, and some things are not. I do agree as well that, Britney Spears, neither here nor there. I don't have her money either. But when I see some injustices, it doesn't matter if it's next door to me where a father can't see his child or is paying child support for a child and can't even, afford gas in his car to go to pay the bill.
Mhm.
But all in all, it's fatherhood from top to bottom. So it's just a way to have everybody kind of break the cap off of the opinions.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you can't care about father. Well, maybe you can, but in the world that I know, fatherhood has to be a full circle.
Well,
You can't
I,
care about some and not about
I
others.
agree because I care about Brittany's two children's fathers who and what has happened to them in the life of
mhm.
There
being the
you
father of
go.
Brittany. So I mean, in reference to this is an entertainment thing that whole and that's not new for child actors that they have a conflict with their parents over their income and Brittany is messed up because her parents didn't do the correct the correct parenting with her
Mhm.
when she was young. I mean,
And
we see that with all the star
yeah, yeah.
actors
And
whose
and to
lives are
me,
destroyed.
and just to me, I'm honestly, I just feel like not all fathers are created equal. And when we look at the idea of this multi-million-dollar situation where they're fighting over dollars, when we have fathers who are paying sometimes 50 and 60% of their income, and they are next to minimum wage earners. I think that's a real tragedy. And I think child support enforcement, which is this is a great segue. Thanks for bringing this up. But it's a great segue into child support enforcement and how it can hurt black and low income non custodial fathers and their children. And let me read you something from an article that was dated June 15th, 2016. And it states that uh, number one, child support orders may be set at rates low income fathers not only can't pay, but the child support methods wreak havoc on fathers' employment and ability to save money. Failure to pay child support can lead to incarceration. Debt and incarceration hinders black fathers and cause harm to their children. And are states looking at ways that they can improve enforcement? I definitely believe that a lot of these laws are still Jim Crow, and you see it manifested. I think in some of its rawest form in family court today,
But
where they know, yeah.
Talon, just to
Mhm.
add, just another component to what you're describing,
Mhm.
the stigma that is faced upon a father who the state sends letters to their job
Mhm.
and about their integrity and character that
Wow.
comes into play when they're saying, well, they're telling their job that, we can't even think about that because you're not even, if you have an experience, imagine the state is saying you're this type of person because they're implying, there's a implied bias that is
Mm-hmm.
there to say that the state sends to your job to say, hey, we want you to garnish this payment
That's
as if
right.
you have an employee that makes your employer may say, well, is this person, what kind of character does this man
Right.
have that he's
Right.
not paying his child, not taking care of his children?
Right.
If something comes
Right.
up, he could be first on the chopping block to even
Right.
lose a job. So
Right.
we don't even think about those little,
Mm-hmm.
uh
Mm-hmm.
micro things that occur in this
Yeah.
whole scenario.
And I think when you look at child support, Brenda, and then by the way, all the mics are open so everybody can chime in at any time. By the way, this is a safe space. I got to keep saying that. There are no, per se right and wrong answers. Nobody's gonna, attack you and say, we hate you. We're gonna block you. We love you less. This is a place where we actually, although it's called Daddy's Matters, too, we want women to chime in. So Lakota, if you're available to chime in and you're listening to us, I want to ask you a question. There are
Mm-hmm.
fathers that I know
Mm-hmm.
who were forced or compelled to pay child support through the court system, um, and there has been no paternity established. And the courts will say, well, we sent letters and we wrote to you and you missed your day in court. So guess what? You're the father. Look it up. I'm not making this up. When I tell some people who have no
Ty,
experience with
Ty,
this, they look at me and they
Ty,
look like
you know,
that's
you,
impossible.
no, I can tell you personally.
Mm-hmm.
That personally,
Mm-hmm.
when a person sends child support requests
Mm-hmm.
to a home that they know that you don't stay at, and so you won't get that mail, and the
Mm-hmm.
court proceedings go on without you. And
Yep.
when those fathers find out that their money, that the child support is coming out, is when it's being
Garnished.
garnished from their check, and they one day go to pay their bills and say, "Well, what happened to my money?" They call their job. The job's not going to tell you that your
Mm-hmm.
check's getting garnished. Then that's when they find out. And
Yep.
can you imagine what happens to somebody when you go, if anybody go to the pay, they get the check to pay their bills for the month, and the money is not there, and they're not knowing why until they go and do all this investigation.
I
You're
know
absolutely right.
an entire family, Lakota, that was made homeless because of that. Because when they garnished the check, they were already behind and they were waiting on that payment to pay rent that they
Mm-hmm.
promised to the landlord, and they gone and shared like all the check. Literally, he had like 60 something cent. And him and his family literally had to move because he was blindsided by a child support order from another state for kids that were adults. They were like, I believe at that point in their like 30s. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it wreaked havoc on, and these are the kind of things that a lot of people don't talk about. And I think we need to have the discussion and we need to change this because it's by design and it's intentional. It's intentional to hurt, to harm a particular segment in the community. Low income and Black families are devastated by what happens in these family courts. So what say you, Lakota? And have you had or know of anyone who's had similar experiences?
Well, I've known a lot of people who've had those experiences where child support would literally render someone bankrupt.
Mm.
Um, and, it's sad because it's only in this country that this phenomena of sticking it to fathers for child support exists. As of 2010,
Mm-hmm.
all European countries except the Netherlands guarantees child support payments to custodial parents, even if the non-custodial parent could not pay or could only pay part. Now,
Mm.
Sweden, which I've lived for about 11 years, it goes even further.
Mm-hmm.
It guarantees assistance in which all custodial parents get child support payment from the government, no matter what. And the government collects what it can, so it's based on, what you can afford paired with your quality of living. So That's why I say it's only in this country where this type of system of child support exists. In European countries, it doesn't exist. You know, yes, you pay taxes out your butt, but you know, they go by the idea of when you pay taxes, when something happens to you, what you paid into the system is what covers you. You know, so it's again, I feel like the whole the system of child support here, and I do agree, I do feel like it is targeted towards, you know, Black families in particular. It's targeted towards those on the poverty level. It's targeted towards those who, which, you know, some women want to gain revenge for, because again, you go and request child support. No, you know, no entity comes to you and says, okay, so you have this child and where's the daddy so he can pay child support? You actually are the one that initiates the whole child support phenomenon. And I've known women who utilized it as a weapon. I remember one time I had a conversation with a few women. Two of them were actively seeking child support. And when I told them that I have no interest in my daughter's father getting him for child support, they looked at me like I had three heads. I was literally vilified because I said, for me, child support is him being present in her life, him taking her out, him helping to provide her basic needs. I'm working, I make a decent salary, and as a custodial parent, I'm more than able to take care of her and in her father, though we've not been together literally since I was pregnant with her. He does what he can. And for me, that's what it should encompass. But what happens in this country is, for the most part, child support is weaponized. Whereas you look at other industrial countries in which it's not weaponized, they realize that, you know what, there are single parents out there. There are people who are not making that much money. And since you're already paying out your ass in taxes, part of your taxes will go into that. So this is by design. It's not the norm.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree with that. I was trying to cut you off, Tyler.
No, go ahead.
Definitely agree with everything everybody's saying. So I can actually speak from all 3 points. One, I can speak from a person that has their child support garnished. Number 2, having the letter sent to the jobs and going through the process and going from one job to the next and going through that process. And I can get some insight on that. And then number 3, just how it is being utilized as a weapon. I'm not going to necessarily say that it's geared just toward, so I'm kind of going to disagree a little bit with Dr. Ron, and I respect Dr. Ron. What's going on, Dr. Ron? I think it's just toward men, period. I think it's back to when women now have a weapon in their arsenal. If they become bitter, they can utilize that child support garnishment to come after you and come after the things that you may have that could potentially be things that can really help out the child in the long run. So this is my advocacy hat, and this is one of the things that I'm on, where, one, to answer the question about the garnishment letter can help out one or two ways. One, my daughter and I's mother, I respect her very highly as the mother that she is, but the two of us as people do not get along. So therefore, the courts originally, I believe, tried to put that in place so that the monies were supposed to go to the child. The only problem is now with Lakota and Ron, what you were saying, Dr. Ron, what you were saying, is in the sense to where the custodial parent has so much more power. So they really are almost like conservatives of that money. So that money cannot directly go to the child. They will say that they're using it for the child, but there's no way really for you to keep tabs on that. So it is very difficult. But in terms of if the two parents cannot get along, and Lakota, I'm glad you have a great relationship with your child's father. But in the sense to where we talk about that concession list. So with that concession list, that becomes a very big issue. The letter going to the employer, it usually takes about 90 days for that process to happen. So if you get 3 months in the rear, they are going to start not only garnishing your money, but they're also going to take an extra, I think it's an extra $50 a month that I had kind of come out of my check. And they take that over a series of months. It's not just a one-time deal. Then number 3, just advocacy is just, at the end of the day, it hurts the child. It hurts the child, the image of what that non-custodial parent may be, because on the flip side, it's just for fathers, and the fathers are really being mostly affected by it, but also can affect other women or non-custodial parents. So it's just a sad thing. We really got to look at this and really talk to our legislators and try and see if we can fix this legislation.
Yeah. Well, on that note, one study found that 70% of debt in California's child support system was owed to the government to pay back TANF benefits received by custodial families.
That's what I was gonna. I'm glad that you said that, Tyline. That's exactly what I was gonna go at, because what they should, and I think that what Ernest is saying is clear, that this system could be better if the systems asked a little bit more questions like they would do with anything else. You know, if someone is getting child support, they get, if they're not, even if they're not getting child support, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they go and apply for food stamps and Medicaid, all of these state benefits, the state then turns around, in the state of Florida, I don't know about other states, they turn around and just say, well, where's the father of this child? Oh, and then the mother says, "Oh, she may know, she can know, because she might have got $200 from him for something else last week, but she would clearly say, I don't know." And then next thing you know, they will say, "Well, we need to find out who he is." They find him. Next thing you know, he doesn't even know, because you see, this becomes part of the bad blood in the communication of these relationships. They're already not on good terms. And this is what I'm looking at a lot. Then the person does it, and instead of just having a conversation and say, "Hey, can you put your child on your benefits? Can you put the child on this? Can you put the child on that?" But a part of that means that then you have to give up, and I say this all the time, give up some of the power that you have of the child, because then the father would have to, when it comes to the medical stuff, you would have to deal with him. You would have to say, "Hey, I need to take it to the hospital. What's the card?" And sometimes you don't even have to. He can give the card, and you pay the copay and all those things. But a lot of times, I think the code guy has it very clear. A lot of times, people are doing these things out of, and I'll say out of spite, but out of also saying that I don't want to deal with this person anymore, when that is the most unhealthiest thing to do for a child, because the child needs both parents. Ask any child who had the passing of a parent how much they need that parent that passed. God forbid, God imagine that the parent is still here and they have access, but they're not getting it. Can you only imagine the trauma built with that?
Mm-hmm. I and by the way, I had Ron Davis, another buddy of mine named Ron, many years ago, committed suicide. He shot himself in the chest and the heart, and in his hand was a child support notice. Um, and let me read you: the Office of Child Support Enforcement authorizes several enforcement methods that can be used to collect child support, including taking up to 65% of a father's wages, intercepting tax returns, placing liens on parents' assets, the surrendering of driver's license. And I just want to talk about that too, because we know that a lot of fathers make money now, or extra money, or try to make ends meet. So I remove the word extra, just try to make ends meet by driving Uber or Lyft, or one of those car sharing companies, and they longer can do that when their licenses are suspended. And a lot of people take the risk and they're driving without licenses, which is another expense and another threat to the community, because they're not insured, and denying other professional licenses. So basically, they make the situation worse. Each of these enforcement methods threatens the ability of non custodial fathers to find and maintain employment and to earn enough to support their families. It's like, on one hand, you say, okay, we want you to support, but now we're going to take every means you have of even getting support. I'm not making none of this stuff. I just want you to know that this is the
You're 100%
reality.
correct, Tyler. You're 100% correct.
I don't know,
Everything
Megan.
you just said.
Yeah,
Everything
Rob.
you said was 100% correct.
Yeah. Let's hear. By the way, I'm sorry, Rob. Let's hear more. I want to hear from Rob, Blake, and Kathleen. You guys have been quiet. This is you got it. This is a participating sport. You guys got to get in it.
Just listening, absolutely. You're speaking of an American system, and the Canadian system's absolutely the same rules apply. They'll take your taxes, your driver's license. You try and maintain a job, your boss will come to you, oh, I see you're guaranteed, you're not paying your child support. Beat it,
Wow.
scumbag. So you go
Yeah.
through that,
Mm-hmm.
So there is a stigmatism that does sit with you with that. And I mean, it is, you just keep digging that hole deeper. They're like, oh, surprise, you've got no driver's license. Okay. And as you say, people do risk it. Absolutely. I know several that will. Several that will. These are professional drivers. They're like, well, I drive truck. That was my job. Now I can't do that.
Yeah. So they take the license and it endangers the community. What about you, Brother Blake?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on everything everybody else said because I'm a living witness. Back in the 80s. Now I'm going back with Janet Reno. She's no longer with, but she was a gunslinger when it came to child support because she did that, arresting you, taking your license. And for me, I was working, but I lost a job.
Right.
And I didn't get a job for a whole year. And back in the 80s, I was paying $800 a month for 2 kids. $800. And I was out of a job for a whole year. And let me tell you something. They added all that up. So when I finally got a job, now you owe $10,000 in arrears.
Wow.
And they make it so very difficult. And then that's just part of the process to keep you down, to just keep you impoverished like that. And even when they turn 18, oh, well, you still got to pay because they didn't go to college. So I had to pay another extra year and a half just to pay off the $10,000. So I'm a living witness to how that system works. And it's not geared to make it profitable for you. It's to discourage you. And it discouraged me. And on top of that, and I was living in Atlanta then and came down here. It was $800 a month. And guess what? You got to help pay for the daycare. That was $150 a week. Another $600. That's over the 65% that I was making because they could care less about how you make it. But that's the system. That's the system. You're right. It needs to be changed.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Dr. Ron and Lakota about this. I want to talk a little bit about the psychological effect because I think a lot of men feel as though, well, you know what? I'm just going to disappear. I'm going to migrate. Like the psychological effect, because you got to have 2 healthy parents, right? You can't have mother, I'm out here making it happen, hear me roar kind of thing. And the dad just feels so psychologically defeated and financially defeated to the point he doesn't want to have it's just easier for me to walk away. Do you guys come into contact with that? And how do you, and for our audience, how do you triage that? How do you get a person who is being garnished to death and to say, hey, hang in there. You might have to pay $800 and you might make $1,500, which leaves you $700 to live off a month. Have you had those exchanges, and how do you do your work?
Well, I know for me, I've not worked with too many fathers who are going through the whole child support piece. But the few that I have worked with, dealt with, feelings of depression, feelings of anxiety, feelings of being inadequate because they're unable to maintain these supports. And the women whom that they've dealt with were, again, women who just weaponized child support. And so it's like, you're not paying, you're not seeing my kid. And we all know that it definitely, it's a detriment to the family unit as a whole, obviously. And it's also a detriment to the child and in different ways, because the child is seeing, this kind of quote unquote drama unfold. It definitely negatively impacts that child's perception of the father, clearly. Long term, this child can definitely have like a negative experiences in relation to relationships, like kind of develop a poor sense of self-concept, serious issues relating to trust. And again, it's just the fact that this child is seeing 2 different narratives unfold. And I've always said that you rarely, when it's positive parenting in the mix, you rarely hear talk of child support. when it's positive parenting, when it's two individuals who are raising the child as best as they can despite the circumstances,
right,
and doing it well, because there isn't any additional layer of things going on. There really isn't. But in terms of like when we think about mental health, and again, like I haven't had a whole lot of experience, but the few men that I've dealt with, it's depression, it's feeling inadequate, it's feeling hopeless, it's feeling that their back's against the wall. I actually had a client whose license was suspended, and this was in Arizona. He lived in Arizona, and guess what? He's a trucker. He's a trucker, and he was what I call the caught off guard parent child support scenario, where he had no idea that he had a son. He had no idea, and whatever situation the mother was going through, I guess she just felt like, okay, now let me put it out there that this is the person, this is the father. And I don't know how she had gotten all his information, but she had all his info. And at the time, the child was 10. So aside from paying current child support, he had to pay back child support, back child support. And it caused him, it came to the point that he was even, you talk about your friend who unfortunately committed suicide. This individual was contemplating suicide because his livelihood was now at jeopardy because his license was not suspended, it was revoked. Wow. And he was faced with not just paying current child support, but he had to pay back child support. So how can an individual breathe under those circumstances? Right. How? And then he tried to appeal to this woman, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work. You have fathers who are paying child support to women who are making six-figure salaries.
Absolutely.
So it's not even an income thing. It's not even, oh, well, if she's making this much money, he shouldn't have to pay child support. There are women who are getting child support rocking a six-figure salary.
Absolutely.
Mentally it puts this individual in such a like a no-win situation.
Well, and let me read you this. In states like South Carolina, where Walter Scott lived, parents can be held in contempt of court and incarcerated if their payments are as few as 5 days late. Let me read that again. 5 days, you can get incarcerated if you're late in South Carolina. And the engagement, with police. So while there is no national data, and this is suspect, right? There needs to be, and maybe we'll be the ones to start doing this, but there is no national data on how many people are incarcerated for failure to pay child support. Studies suggest.
I would actually love to read. I think that was her background. I'd love to read what Kathleen said. She says, I've seen firsthand within my family household the struggle of keeping up the child support money due to prison issues. The person struggled for a while, but the mental aspect is real for them. Yet again, parenting issues compound the relationship interaction. So this is very real within the low income and Hispanic community. Shout out to you, Kathleen. Very well written. What do you think about that, Tylon?
Yeah, I mean, I think child support and in just one of those ways where they just really everything is about $1. There's $1 amount to your child. They have no interest in families coming together and figuring out what is fair, what is just, what is doable. And then people go into seasons. Like, it's acceptable, right? A woman is in a certain season in her life where she needs help and she gets public assistance, right? Therefore, she needs public assistance, right? She goes to public assistance and they say, where's the father? Where's the father? And they give the father information, provide that information. The father can't be in the season.
But Tylon, what you saying? But here's this is why I think that you're absolutely right about legislation and starting to make bills and that has to come from somewhere. Because let me tell you something, a large majority of these fathers that I experience when we talk about the mental experiences they have. It's not, it wouldn't be as bad if they wasn't having to pay child support and then not being able to even get any access to their children. It's one thing to pay your money to do what you're supposed to do, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
always some reason, and then there's the fear of making you a threat. The
Mm-hmm.
larger majority of fathers that we come in contact in our program, a lot of them come to us because of what has happened. They not longer with the mother. They weren't married to her. They were no longer with her, and they decide that they want to go down, and because it's very clear, you can go down and request your co-parenting at the court. When the mother gets served that you're seeking to joint custody of the child, many of the cases that they go right down to the the,
Mm-hmm.
the protection order or restraining order and say that you did something to them.
Right.
And now that then changes your case of requesting
Mm-hmm.
custody into now a so that your case gets pushed back about trying to get custody of children, because now the court is more concerned about safety of children, safety of this person,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of times unfound allegations.
Right.
And so you can only imagine that here I'm still paying child support. Now I'm in the court system saying that allegedly that I have did some abusive things, or threatened my child, threatened the mother of my child, did these things. And that you can only imagine what that means to somebody, and how that plays a game with their
Very
mind,
much.
and how they
Oh,
Right.
continue to
totally.
live. That's insanity. And all I wanted to do was see my child.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Even listen, guy was accused of coming to the house with flowers.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, I would never go to a house with flowers because I'm no longer, listen, that would be a no-no for my new partner to go to the
Right.
house with flowers. But
Right.
I found that some of the ways that a solution to some of this, if it can get done, because I find this, and I'll say very true about this. We talk about accountability, and I question a lot of times women being held accountable, mothers being held accountable for what they do when it comes to child support and any of this. You don't hear it. But when you have your own partner and you get your partner to then become the person to go, because I had a lady on my show on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
She was remarried to her husband. Her husband was in prison,
Mm-hmm.
and the mother was getting child support, and then she went to speak to the mother and to say, listen, I think I want them to, he's my husband, I'm paying part of this child support, so I'm gonna get the daughter to come over my house with me. And the mother had to, she wasn't with the father, but she was more willing to let the mother, who the wife of this man, take the daughter and let the daughter come over the house. And so it
Mm.
was like this accountability, because what are you going to tell this woman who you're getting child support from,
Mm-hmm.
because he in prison, child support still going on, and it's coming from her income because they're married.
Wow.
You're going to tell this, and she clearly let the young lady have a relationship with the mother, and then eventually she was able to establish taking the daughter up to the prison to see the
Mm.
husband, all these
Mm.
things. But I think that when this happens, we need more accountability from other women to hold
Mm-hmm.
other women accountable, just like they want us to hold other men accountable. Because I'm big on holding men accountable.
Right.
Are you taking care of your kid? If you're not taking care of your kid, you're not no man to me.
Right.
So, but I understand then if you can't take care of your kid, that's a different scenario.
Right.
Choose
Right.
not to. But I do think that if you're gonna take care of your kid, you listen. If I pay money to McDonald's when I go through the window, I expect
Mm-hmm.
to get a hamburger back.
Right.
Not say, well, come back tomorrow.
Mm.
I pay another 10. Oh, come back tomorrow. We don't got hamburgers ready, but pay your bill anyway. That's
Well,
not right.
we are at the halfway mark at 7:01 p.m. And just for folks' ID, you are tuned into Daddy's Matter 2 on the GoPro Radio Network, a Brenda Brown creation. And we're talking a little bit about child support and its impact on low income and black families. And a survey in South Carolina found that 1 in 8 inmates had been incarcerated for failure to pay child support. That's
Mhm.
1 in 8. And by the way, if they're incarcerated, they're not paying child support. It seems like those old slave code laws. It's like you're free, but if you have nowhere to go, you're a vagrant, and we're gonna lock you up. It's just more of those kind of you know laws that kind of go against common sense. Like if the goal is the child, the goal is having somebody function in a way where they can support their child. And let me tell you, when fathers are incarcerated, they cannot work or save money to send to their child, and they may not be able to suspend or adjust their child support order. All right, so increasing their debt is not wise. It's not smart. Only people who have the design of bolstering the prison industrial complex can conceive of such laws that really break up families and do a real disservice to families and children in particular. Okay, so now I want to thank each and every one of you. We have to, and I think one of the areas, Ron, Lakota, and everyone else on this panel is to first we need to have some research done. We need to find out how many people are actually in prison, because they're not telling us this, who are in prison or have been jailed for lack of child support. I think that number is staggering.
And child support related issues. In the reference of this, I'm going to get my child support by any means necessary.
Yep.
I'm not saying they justify. It doesn't. If you're doing wrong, you're doing wrong. But we know in certain communities, people do things to survive the best they can.
Right.
And just remember a little bit, Thailand, to put a little tidbit in there, that the child support enforcement agency are actually creditors. So what you really think you're doing, you're paying the courts. You're really not paying the courts. What you're doing is you're paying out of debt. You're paying the banks. And so what they're going to do is they say they're the worst creditors. And then the guy told me they're the worst creditors in the country. They will come after you. So you're not really dealing with the courts. You're dealing with creditors. Remember that.
Yep. Yeah, but they definitely have the weight and the support of this state. And I think more attention need to be paid to the laws and how they're written and who they really hurt at the end of the day. And if it's about families and you're talking about family court, and they got so many nice things, child support, family court, like who could be against that, right? But when you look at it, it's anti-family, right? And it's anything but creating an environment where there's love, nurturing and cultivating of children. It's not. Ron Weber says, shoot, sorry, gang. I got a call for monitoring for wildfire. Wow. Stooped lightning. Sorry to Dearth Out, and was, he wanted to say dart out. And it's a great conversation, and says, sorry again to cut and bolt here, but he's going to talk to all of us later. So we wish Ron well, and we hope that he stays safe. There's a lot of things going on with the weather. I mean, we've had back-to-back thunderstorms. I mean, usually you get a thunderstorm like once a week, but we have like a thunderstorm Monday, Tuesday. I'll give you a break on Wednesday, and then a thunderstorm on Thursday. It's like, what is going on with this weather? Anybody know what's going on? I feel like what's this guy? Somebody with a weather machine, and we need James Bond to intercede. And there's some weather machines, some stuff going on. This is incredible. This is phenomenal. What's going on with the weather? But anyway, we're gonna switch gears, and as promised, we're gonna take a little break for the second half, a 1-minute break. We're gonna have a little music interlude, and when we come back, we're gonna be talking about toxic masculinity. Yes, we're going to talk about that, and Dad's going to chime in. We're going to hear what women have to say about this, so don't go anywhere. Daddies Matter 2, Part 2, in just 30 seconds, and we'll be right back. right. 1, 2. All right. That's Antioch. And it's the Buddhas band. And it's spelled B-U-D-O-S. Band. Really, really, really good music instrumentalist group. Yeah, well, we are back. And this is Daddy's Matters 2, and I am your host, Tylon, along with my wonderful, lovely co-host, Brenda Brown, who's also the creator, of Daddy's Matter 2. I think I've had one drink too many.
Well, cheers to you, Tylon. It's always good to be here on GoPro Radio.
Thank you. Thank you. And also, we have our co-host and wonderful, esteemed, intelligent, and good-looking panelist, Lakota Leon. What's up, Lakota? And we have Ernest and Ron C. Osborne. And today, we're going to discuss a little bit about toxic masculinity. People have been using that word and throwing it around. It's been in conversations and universities and on the street corners and in homes. And I think it's worth talking about, especially as dads. And let me share my screen and let's see what folks are saying. But welcome to the second half. And this is going to be a really interesting conversation, I know. And I'm gonna get a lot of folks' thoughts on it. All right. So what you see, let's start from here. What is toxic masculinity? Because I think when people hear it and say it, it invokes so much. And so this is what Wikipedia has said, and masculinity becomes toxic when men feel they need to conform to rigid gender norms, which include, and not limited to, acting like a bully to maintain constant competitive advantage, avoid losing at all costs, restraining one's emotion except for pride and anger, which are the only acceptable masculine emotions to express, showing strength and aggression in moments of conflict, being dominant over women and other men, which is typically displayed through microaggressions. That's another word you hear a lot, microaggressions. And I'm being triggered by your masculinity. What is toxic masculinity, Lakota? I'm going to go to you first because, you're a health clinician. You deal with these words. I've heard you mention it. And
Okay, so toxic masculinity, for the most part, I get Wikipedia's definition, but for the most part, it refers to the notion that some people's idea of manliness perpetuates like domination, homophobia, and aggression. The idea that men need to act tough to avoid showing all emotions. And it boils down to 3 components. Toughness, again, and it kind of touched on this a little bit, the notion that men should be physically strong, emotionally callous, and behaviorally aggressive. Then there's the anti-femininity piece, that involves the idea that men should reject anything that is considered to be feminine, such as showing emotion or accepting help. And then there's the power dynamic. And I think that's where they loosely talk about microaggression. And that's the assumption that men must work towards obtaining like power and status, social and financial, so they can gain the respect, of others. For the most part, like toxic masculinity, like just really glorifies, unhealthy habits. It kind of takes away from the man the whole notion of self-care. Okay. That self-care is very, people put, and if you look at it, people put self-care in a very almost feminine type context. Like you never see self-care as it relates to men. And it's almost like the absence of self-care feeds into this view of toxic masculinity. And also toxic masculinity, for the most part, also discourages men from like getting mental health, for whether it's for depression, whether it's like substance abuse, because for many, mental health is still even in the age of 2021, viewed as something you do keep secret, something, that you're weak if you don't know how to like handle yourself as a man dealing with mental health issues. So I feel like the Wikipedia does have this broad definition. It's much more than that. I mean, I personally don't like the term toxic masculinity. I'm not a fan of it. Because when they talk about toxic masculinity, they're not talking about your average white dude. And I think that's something that we need to kind of make known. So that's my spiel on it.
All right, because I was going to talk about it, and I think that word has, in fact, been weaponized against men in general, and in particular, black men. And I think it's weird that and let me just pose this as a question, because I think that this may be a really good, healthy debate. How come we don't hear toxic femininity?
Listen. Tell her you take the word. You take the words right out of my mouth, because
I'm telling you, we're like this.
For anything to be balanced, right? It should be able to show on both genders that they exist, that it exists. But you're not going to see that because here I have a list of toxic masculinity can also look like this. No baby changing stations in men's restrooms. Among most of the focused care for men, no focused care for men victims in domestic violence abuse. Male suicide rates being 4 times of females. Males being mocked for showing emotions. Men being told that they have to be hypersexual, and men never receiving physical affection from their family. That also is toxic masculinity that men don't push on themselves. So when we talk about the idea of toxic masculinity, it's sometimes denoted that it's representing of men and only men who produce this, not realizing that it's society, both men and women, who feed into that idea and supports it to occur. And that's where I think when you're saying it seems kind of used to represent men in some way, and especially black men in a large way. But let's look at the bigger picture of who we're all talking about. We're talking about that this can't be something that's in isolation. It's only and that's for me for a lot of negative statements about men. It seems like it's very isolated when people use these. They speak about things. They don't say, and I think Lakota said it could. They don't say all white man. They just say men. They say all men. And if you have to remember, if it's coming from a certain population who's saying it, if Asian women are saying men are toxic, what men are they saying toxic?
Right.
They would be saying we denote that they mean Asian men are toxic.
Right.
So if when black women or white women say toxic masculinity, they're usually talking about their own men in many cases. So it plays hard, man.
Yeah, it does. And it's one of those things that you have to figure out, like, what is acceptable. And I would love for what you just said to kind of become a very popular meme in terms of like the way that people are, utilizing this word and weaponizing it. And I really do believe, like, wholeheartedly, I'll tell you in a bit, that is weaponized, especially in particular. I think the face of toxic masculinity, if somebody was to draw it, it would be a black man with a wife beater T-shirt, and he's
drinking a 40.
40, yeah. So it's funny how you hear words, but it's like another coded word. It's like to me, it's in code. How do you feel about that, Kathleen? You've been quiet. I think you've been texting. I don't know if you want to go on camera, but what are your thoughts on that? Okay, yeah, she's in the house. S-
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Um, oh, yeah, I never really, you see, I was thinking about how media plays a big role when it comes to spreading, spreading what toxic, the common toxic masculinity, but you rarely see toxic femininity. And I I really don't like, I'm just absorbing the information. Like, honestly speaking, I'm just absorbing and listening to what you guys are saying, because even though it's not new, it's not it's not as it's not as posted, and it's not as spread as when it comes to talking about men, and like all the issues and things about men that are wrong. Um, like like Ron mentioned, I think there needs to be a balance when it comes to toxic masculinity and also toxic femininity, because I also feel like as women we also do play a big part when it comes to relationships, especially um new relationships. I think as women we tend to put a lot more expectation on men putting a lot more of the work in it. And I think as women, we've kind of been given the praise and the glory of being seen as, we're the main prize and we're the trophy. But I think that's all I really have to say. I'm just really just taking everything in right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, I think to that point, I think a lot of modern women, they want the authority of a man, they want the privilege of a woman, and the accountability of a child. And it's like, when they use words like toxic masculinity, it puts them in a position where they can more or less, you know, point fingers and say, it,
What?
I was walking down the street with a friend, and I said, and I'm very old school, and I always walk on the right hand side, and I look at that as manners, and
Right.
the
It's
woman was like, no, 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 don't do that. I was like, what? Excuse me? She said, no, I'm fine on this side of the street. I don't something I don't acquiesce to like gender norm, whatever. So I think too, men are like, do I hold open doors?
but but
Uh, uh,
can I say something really quick, and then I'm just gonna like mute.
Sure.
Um you mentioned a very good point. Kind of like the manners of, when you're outside, how you go to the side to kind of like protect the woman. I think that's also depending on the like it's a very cultural thing from what I've seen. At least when I've seen it with my older sibling who's a male. Um, just growing up, when we would walk on the street, he will always go on the side of the sidewalk to make sure that I'm protected, to make sure that I'm okay. Um, I just wanted to throw that there. So I feel like it's also like a cultural thing that's kind of
Right.
perpetuated. So I think there are other aspects that come into play, besides, what's put out there on TV and social media. I think it also plays a big role when it comes to interactions within our own um, our own family settings as well.
I love what Catherine said. I love what you're saying, Catherine, because you're bringing this multi-dynamic part of this that we are
Yes.
so much leave out of the conversation. Is that this also this idea of toxic masculinity is a group of people who is making everyone have to fit into their cultural beliefs of something, and
Right.
that may not be our cultural beliefs, and now we are things that we have been doing for years that we believe is okay in our culture, what we like is now being told that is wrong, and that we need to be doing something about. We need to get this person, we need to make this person change. We need to What we've been doing for years have been wrong because you have made a decision that you felt it was wrong for you. And I think that is a big issue that we have, and in this whole dynamic of the culture that has occurred. I mean, also you see this, it also gives people the opportunity not to take the accountability for the relational problems that they have in a relationship that really represents them, not an overall like this person is toxic. No, how about that you and this person really don't have the means to be in a relationship with each other, and so maybe you need to just
Mhm.
move yourself, go get go get a person that you don't have these issues with, and then be involved. But you would rather
Yep.
not accept that I'm not good in this part of the relationship. They're not good. You rather just say, oh, he's toxic, she's toxic, their person is this and that. No, they're not. They're just not suitable for you. So move on and find somebody who is suitable. Instead of using that cop out, I say, they say, oh, this person that's toxic, this and toxic. Because what you don't like, somebody else might love. So
You're right.
I think also, you know, toxic femininity does exist. The reason why we don't talk about it as much is that, with the overarching purveyor that is feminism, we don't talk about it. But toxic femininity does exist. And as a matter of fact, there was a study, and it was, I believe it was done by the Yale School of Business, which looked at women in the workplace. And women more than men actually bully at a higher rate than men in the workplace. Actually, 58% of women in the workplace that holds levels of power bully their victims, and there are other women 90% of the time. And with regards to toxic femininity for women, it's a way that women, sabotage others by using like traditionally quote unquote feminine qualities. And that can take the form of like gossip, disapproval, social exclusion, acting weak just to get something out of. So, we don't talk about toxic femininity mainly because the overarching narrative has been like the heaviness of feminism. It's easier to, take the male and, I'll use, one of the terms that Talon uses, because I'm thinking in terms of the Black male, but, it's easy to kind of shift the narrative to the boogeyman and then create this whole notion of toxic masculinity, which is a term actually that's really fairly new, because 10 years ago, we weren't talking about toxic masculinity. We were talking about misogyny. We weren't, whereas now, I think between social media, between mainstream media, between the way like Black males have been like vilified in almost every aspect of our society, it's just that it's easier to prop that as opposed to saying, you know what, you have toxic masculinity and you have toxic femininity as well. So it exists. It's just not spoken of because it just seems easier to lean towards a narrative of, the man being the brute. And here are the negative qualities with regards to that. Because the female can be just as brutish. When we talk about child support, that woman whom is, sticking it to that individual, knowing his situation, that's toxic. That's a form of toxic femininity. When she's using, herself as the woman, as the quote unquote single parent to get that, from the father, irregardless of whether or not it was a relationship, one night stand, what have you. But this society is so anti-male that is just very easy to lean on toxic masculinity, because to talk about toxic femininity, all of a sudden now we're blurring gender lines, because then the argument will be, well, what about our non-binary people? What about those who are gender non-conforming? It's easy to just, it's just one aspect that makes it easy to focus on toxic masculinity.
Right.
Shout out to you, Lakota. Shout out to you, Kathleen. Shout out to everybody. I think Thailand, I can 2 words, the list. The list is ever growing.
You sound. Can you get it closer to your mic? Is it just me? Is everybody can hear him clearly?
Yeah, he sounds a little far back.
Yeah, you sound a little far away from the microphone.
It's a little bit better for you.
No, it's not better.
I may just have to abstain then.
Maybe hit
You're
the
good
microphone.
now.
Maybe something's inside the mic. It sounds like something's in the way. You sound like you're like you're talking far away, like the microphone is down on a table and you're.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
It's better. It's better. It's better. It's not.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it real quick and then I'll mute that way. I think I'm having a mic problem. But shout out to Kathleen, shout out to Lakota. Going back to what I was saying earlier, 2 words: the list. The list of concessions are ever growing. The list of the expectations of the male figure in society is ever growing, and it's making us distance from the point of what the male figure is supposed to be in society. I think when you look at what social media, what mainstream media is showing a black male as, we're not being shown as strong. We're not being shown as leaders. The buffoonery of us being shown, where you mentioned the imagery of a white beater, a 40-ounce and sagging jeans, as opposed to us wearing suits and us wearing nice clothes and us running corporations. I think when we can start addressing some of those social issues of how we're being looked upon, I think, and dispelling that word toxic. That word toxic only was inserted into society probably the last 3 to 5 years. And we trying to just, especially with this show on the Local Radio Network, I think we go ahead and address that. We just create balance. I think we'll be fine.
Absolutely. Thank you.
But I would say something about that because we want to almost listen. I know Talon used the example, the wife beater, what have you, and that look. We're talking about an urban look from a person, but I think we need to remember and mind that most of the toxic masculinity comes from a person who's dressed in a full piece suit, who has the power at the corporate job to do and say things and and have the power to be toxic, and nothing can be done about it. You know, they don't have a Karen that can call the police on them. They have to actually take whatever that person does because the whole system is set up for them. So there's 2 roads to that, 2 sides to it.
Sure, 100%. Yeah, I think that's why I think if we're wearing the suits, we can show that and dispel that image on the other side of how we may take our power and use it to abuse, and take that power and use it to uplift and elevate people to where we can grow as a society.
All right. And by the way, just joining us in this wonderful conversation is I'm a daddy. This is my daughter, Taya Rain Washington, in the house. She's
Rain, what up?
Hey,
girl.
And we're talking about toxic masculinity. And I just wanted to get a perspective from somebody who is 15. And I know she's heard that word. And I think she's the targeted market for that word. What does toxic masculinity mean to you when you've heard it? The mic right here.
I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. She's a Washington. She's a thinking. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like certain movies that kind of like show it and show how it traumatizes the kids themselves or parents or you know, and etc.
What comes to mind when you hear the word toxic masculinity? How would you see it like played out if you had to visualize toxic masculinity?
I think like the first thing that comes to mind is like abusive people, like abusive parents or abusive dads and fathers that like I hear a lot about, especially on the news, like or just like I just think of like abuse for some reason. That's like the first thing that would come to mind. Or just I'm trying to think, or like inequality in a way. So,
okay. All right.
That's what I can visualize.
Whoa. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Little Miss Washington. So
I had a very good friend of mine who's a clinician. He said, and this is a Black man, he believes that the term toxic masculinity, it's almost like a direct, I don't want to say dig, but it's kind of it's almost like something that was almost engineered to propel like the whole like gay rights movement. And this is coming from a clinician, you know, who's super intelligent, probably one of the most intelligent clinicians I know,
Let,
next to Dr. Ron.
Lakota, listen, Lakota, he's not too far from that
No,
mark
and yeah.
because if you ever been, listen, I'll tell you, I had to leave this platform. If you know, Clubhouse is a platform I was on, and you would have people there who would literally, they would state that if you are a heterosexual black man, no matter what you do, you're toxic. Gay men, trans women, and men and women are victims of them. I was like, they're as bad as the white supremacists. And I say, well, hold on, stop for a minute. Hold on. How can
Yeah.
I be aligned with the white man, white supremacist? Where did I get to
Yeah.
that? Because I have zero power in
Right.
anything that I can really do in many cases. But
Right.
that is like you, Lakota, that, you know, and then so many people won't say it because they're scared they might get canceled by the community,
No.
attack them. But if you watch and you sit back and you observe and don't say anything and just watch how it operates, you see a lot of that occurring right now, where people are using that as a straight attack on black men. And then I would say,
Yes.
and I always will argue and say, well, who you talking about? Are you talking about black men? Are you talking about men, all men? Are you talking about white men? And then that's when it gets problematic, because they're just saying, we're
Right.
talking about you right now because you're
Right.
saying something against us. I'm like,
Right.
hold on.
Right. Because look at the, and again, I'm not knocking anyone's artistry, but look at the answer to toxic masculinity. You know, you got Lil Nas X. You know, you have there's another dude who was like kind of like personifying, you know, I guess his interpretation of like feminine and masculine emergence. But you know, when I spoke to my colleague, it really took me aback when he said that, because he was like, you know, think about it. You know, he's like 10, 20 years ago, you know, the whole notion of pride wasn't at the forefront. You know, the whole idea that the LGBTQIA MOUSE community were not like the financial power brokers that a lot of them are now. And so what is the answer to that? You know, what is the answer to kind of prop that population up?
Well,
you know, toxic masculinity.
Well, I think part of the answer is having intelligent, beautiful people like Dr. Ron Lakota, you know, Brenda Brown and Ernest and all the folks who are on here speaking, you know, truth to power. I think we've kind of moved away from, you know, I think just speaking our truth, because we're afraid we're going to get canceled. And it's like, no, we don't have an NBC show. I think we're
right.
We,
I don't worry about that. I don't listen. I'm already canceled right now. So your canceling might help me. Come on and cancel me, because they don't know nothing. Because come on and cancel me.
Yeah, and you know, I think Malcolm X said we always operate like as if we have something to lose, and look at us. You know, look at where we are. We have all to gain by speaking truth to power. And I think this idea of losing something or losing friends or, you know, annoying our friends. I have friends that are gay that will tell you that this is horrible.
This man is inside my head. You must be inside my head.
No,
you're inside my head. Because I was about to say that. I was just thinking that amazingly, I don't know how any of my gay male friends who consider themselves, they can't understand they're not even a part of this movement at some point. They saying, what is this movement even about? Because it's not what we own.
Right.
So I guess they must be toxic with me in some place, but it's like almost like there's have been infiltration of a movement that these people decided that this is what's going to be the target. Here's the people who were going to indicate or say that did this or did that. And that's the game. And again, listen, they had a platform, they had the money, they had the bucks, and if you say anything against them, or even if you disagree with their statements, they will come for you. And that's never a good play. That's tyranny in itself. That to me is the same thing that you're fighting against, you're doing to other people. And that's a very scary place for us to get in as a society.
Right. And one thing that we will never do and never ever become on this show is a non not safe place. We are going to stay safe. And I encourage people who have a difference of opinion, and because I think, Dr. Ron, I think that it's important that people see people that disagree still considered family. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have a culture where it's just so much drama. You see it on Housewives, any kind of hip hop show, or so called hip hop reality show. It's just people just getting ugly and disgusting with each other. It's just horrible.
But that's engineered time. That's
Yeah,
engineered. I mean, this weekend I've been in Atlanta, and all we did was had these very intense conversations about fatherhood, about children, about couples, about getting married. We had all these conversations, and listen, no one agreed. No one is
hmm
the expert. No one is anything. And at the end of the day, we still all love each other, and we
that's
all
what's
could
up.
had a good time. But the conversation builds us. and,
Right,
and and if you disagree or not disagree, at least you learn something from it. And a lot
right.
of times, what you have in these conversations, the people only want their point of view to be right, and they're not willing to learn or even hear the other side of what's happening, and that's scary.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Like this, even with the word, there's a sense of, they talk about tolerance, but they don't practice it. You know, um, and I just think that's a sad state of affairs because that really produces a breakdown of communications. And I think the quality of our community hinges upon us being able to communicate with each other effectively. And if someone is around you and they feel like they can't say this, or I don't know how he's gonna feel, are we still gonna be brothers? We still gonna be, I don't know, I don't want to offend my white friend, he's white, this is feeling awkward for me. And and I think that's just a sad state. And it's very difficult to improve. We can't move from that if we can't have honest and healthy conversation in a truly healthy environment and safe environment. What do you say about that? We have for some, Shirley Moss is in the house. Hi, Shirley. I don't know if the mic is on. Yeah, I don't know if you've been listening to us. You want to chime in on this? Also, you know, yes, Shirley's in the house. I like her hat in the picture. Really nice hat. Really cool. Um, we're talking about toxic masculinity, and we're talking about how that word perhaps is being weaponized against our community, and the ways that people uh, don't have a balance when it comes to like these ideas, and what agenda I think too it serves when we are slinging these words around and using it almost to like mute people. It's like, remember like that word, I don't know, you guys remember the word homophobia? Everybody, you say anything about homosexuals, you'd be like, oh, you're homophobic. I'm not scared of gay people. I find them very entertaining and very smart and atmosphere. Gay people are, but you can't criticize. You can't say anything about anybody gay. You just can't. It's
Hey, Talon, I got a question for our young panelists. We talk about it out there in society and out there on social media like that.
she
What
can't
is she
hear you.
seeing?
You sound,
Yep.
yeah, it's hard.
Turn that up. The speaker.
It's up all the way.
Okay. Yeah, say it again.
She said, "Can you
Better?
say it? Say it again."
What is she seeing in the high school level?
What am I not seeing? I actually haven't been in the high school since I'm only a freshman, but in middle school I saw a lot of it because like in middle school people are growing up, so they're getting more influenced by other stuff. And then high school kind of calms down, in my opinion. But in middle school it was more like if you it was like kind of felt like the opposite. It's like if you weren't part of the LGBTQ community, you were like gonna get criticized kind of. Like, oh my god, you're straight, that's so not cool. So some people just like people acted gay, or just common boys saying, oh, that's gay, or that's sus.
Mm.
That's what I saw a lot.
Shout out to you. She's intelligent, Talon. Good job.
Oh,
What I do. I can't think of anything else really, but it was more of like it was like a half and half thing. It depends what group you were in, where you were going to be accepted or not. But mostly the school was really supportive. Like there was a club for it and stuff, and it didn't seem that toxic when it came to that. But it was like, if you would say a homophobic comment, the whole school would hear it and then criticize you. Like it just kind of.
So there's like, I guess, a supportive system towards anything you would say that was like anti-gay. Is it like that? If they say, if you say something anti-black?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If someone said the N-word, or I remember in middle school it was really bad because some, like, I guess white kid said the N-word and he got jumped in the bathroom. And I don't know what happened after. I just heard about it. But I remember my friend was telling me, and she was like straight from Africa, like a whole immigrant, like straight from there. But she was also racist in a way, because she was like, only black people can say the N-word. I don't know why these white people keep trying to act like they're black or something like that. And then would also be like, oh, Taya, you're light skinned, so you can't even say the full word or something like that. But even though even though in general it's like saying the F word, it's kind of like the same thing. It's an insult to most, or it would be considered.
Well, I can tell you, if she's from Africa, she can't be racist. Racist implies power. You got to have power.
I know. I told you this. I told you this a while ago.
Yeah, but so sometimes it's not the same thing. You got that false. What do you call that? What do you call that, Dr. Ron? When it false that false, trying to make it equal, but it's not really. When you look at it under a microscope, you say, no, people can, with a stroke of a pen, make policies that are, in fact, and laws that are racist. This system is racist. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but I can tell you, look it up. White supremacy is real. It's not a figment of my imagination. We could be as prejudiced as we want.
Imagine, Tyler. Imagine this. I want you to process this part, that we can laugh about it, right? And people would say, well, y'all should be mad. But guess what? A lot of people don't realize that this is so much of our reality, and we persevere through it every day, that sometimes the idea of us getting mad, it's not even healthy for us. As I said before, people say you laugh about some of the most morbid things, and you grin about them, because I want to balance myself with the dopamine that's going to come from happiness. So I laugh, and so I'm not going to get mad about the idea of white supremacy and the way it affects me. I'm going to laugh about it, and the dopamines will make me feel better, and I'll smile, and I'll say, okay, I can keep going, because I know this is not about me, it's about them.
Yeah. That's some real talk, heavy talk. By the way, guys who are just listening in and who are seeing the tape show that goes up every Wednesday on the GoPro Radio website, www.goproradio.com, and on YouTube. And you're tuned in to the incredible show called Daddies Matter Too. I'm the host, Tylon Xavier Washington, and I have my wonderful co-hosts in the house, Brenda Brown, Lakota Leon, Ron C. Osborne, Dr. Ron, I call him. Just we're brothers. I'm gonna start. You know what? We're gonna do a DNA with Dr. Ron. He may be a brother from another mother. We understand things in a certain way. So I want to thank you all for being here. Next week is going to be an incredible show. We're going to talk about relationships, and which I think is very, very important. We talk about community building, and so forth, and we're going to be delving into that a little bit. But please share, like, subscribe. And matter of fact, when you do share far and wide. I know sometimes we check ourselves. We look at our content and we say, hey, hey, I look pretty good. I wish I would have turned this way. And I wish when I said that, I didn't know I had a booger in my nose. So I hope that, you look at it and you share it and invite folks to the conversation. We're here every Sunday without fail. We used to be 1 hour. Now we are 2 hours. We're on from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely join our Facebook group. And also definitely leave comments, questions, and concerns. Uh, in the chat area so that we can improve upon the model. We want to make this show a real family event, and we know that although it says daddies matter, we know that the mommies matter, and of course, our children matter. Yes, they do. They matter so much to us, and I'm just having a good time with the little one. She's here for another week, and then I get it for another 2 weeks in August, which is going to be a lot of fun. How are you guys out there handling this new variant that's out there? Do you guys are still engaging? We got a couple of more minutes. I wonder because I'm thinking about taking her out, but I'm a little nervous. I'm
Well,
really
the variant is impacting low vaccinated areas. That's the danger with this variant, that if it's low vaccinated populations, low vaccinated areas, is where the variant is, more prevalent. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you're wearing your mask and you're practicing your protocols, if you're not vaccinated, you should be okay. And New York continues to have the lower numbers compared to other cities in other areas of the country that are, because of this variant and because of low vaccinated areas, there rises in cases. So as long as she's, protected and you're protected, that's what it boils down to. But the variant's impact is on individuals who are either not vaccinated or carry secondary chronic illnesses. And I'm just getting this.
I'm also hearing that a lot of people who's been vaccinated got issues.
Such as?
Like heart issues. There's people who are, particularly young people, are having heart issues after getting one dose.
So according to my sister, who's I'm texting right now, who many people know as a nurse practitioner, she's saying that those stories are highly exaggerated. There have been some reports of such, but for the most part, the vaccines have been working in terms of individuals either not contracting COVID, or if you do contract COVID, because you can always still contract COVID, vaccinated, the likelihood of hospitalization, use of oxygen, or death is greatly reduced. She says the main concern is low vaccinated areas to which the variant is running rampant.
But she also works for she's in the medical field, right?
Yes. She's in the medical field and stuff, but it's the areas, it's just areas that have that if you look at areas in the South, in the Midwest, where people are not getting vaccinated. She says that actually, since the onset of the vaccine, it's gone down 85% in terms of people getting vaccinated. There was a point where everyone was getting vaccinated, but now it's dramatically has dropped down. So in its dramatic drop, this variant, which is, she says, highly contagious and in instances deadly, those cases are starting to prop up. But it is in areas where there is low vaccinations happening.
Dr. Ron, have you been vaccinated? I'm not.
I can tell you right now, I have not been vaccinated. But I also take the precautions whenever I am to protect myself. And I do understand that a lot of people have got vaccinated, but I think that also became a false um, hope, because again, statistics tell you that, hey, this doesn't stop you from continuing to still get the virus. It's
Right.
to stop you from dying if you had illness. If you maybe have some preconditions, high risk or what have you. So one of the things I didn't do, I don't take certain things into my body. I mean, I would have to, even with medicine, I would have to be actually unconscious, and it would be one of those things. I mean, when you're talking about somebody who sometimes have actual surgery, oral surgery with no medicine. So that just
Wow.
gives you a
Hmm.
tolerance of pain and how I feel about medical, because I'm very high on my immune system, and I think that's a big thing for me, my immune
Yeah.
system, and that comes, and I'll tell you where that comes from. It comes from my experience of working and being involved as advocates about HIV and AIDS, and I think that that's one of the big things when I think about this virus, and I think about the comparison of how the concern is and how it compared to this concern of the HIV and AIDS virus. They're very similar in what they can do and how they, how these viruses attack the immune system and the things that happen in the immune system. That you begin to, when you have that kind of awareness, you think about that a lot. So, no, I don't have the vaccination. I continue to take the things I need to take to keep my body in a trim, and I keep the precautions where I look like a fool walking around Atlanta yesterday with a mask on when nobody had one on. But it is, it is what it is, and that's how it kind of operates.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I was vaccinated, and I still wear my mask. And I had the Moderna shot, and I feel great. I've had I had like 1 or 2 days in which I was kind of a little out of it, but
mm,
I am glad at the decision I made, because I hated living this weird, isolated life. I miss going out. I miss being in like a social setting, and this vaccine, like I said, it's not the end all cure all, but at least I can go out, as opposed to staying at home or working remotely from home. But when I do go out, I wear my mask, because I'm not concerned about those who actually have COVID and are in the hospital. They're not the ones that's going to impact me or the public. It's those who are asymptomatic, whom you don't know, who are not presenting symptoms, that those who are not vaccinated should really continue to practice PPE precautions. But I, for myself, I continue to wear a mask when I'm outdoors. I mean, I went to Times Square with my daughter yesterday. Um, she was with her godmother. They went to a restaurant. I went to pick her up, and we were walking down Times Square, and there was a majority of people who were still wearing masks, um, versus those who weren't wearing masks. So I think for the most part, people are still practicing protocols, because it really was the minority that were not rocking masks compared to the greater population that still were wearing masks. But I think it's people's choice. I completely agree with Dr. Ron in terms of health, in terms of maintaining your immune system, especially for individuals who have comorbid um, illnesses. Whether it is asthma, whether it is obesity, whether it is certain type of cancers. It's just really a question of like really caring for yourself,
Right.
because the flu can kill you.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people are, one of the things I'd say is that it's human nature that we're very unproactive. We're very reactive. And I
Mhm.
think that, this hope of the virus taught us that people should be, proactive about a lot of things. And then you see a lot of people have just went back to say, hey, give me the virus. I can even imagine people that say, oh, I'm just get the vaccine so I can help and do. And I say, well, uh, you're going to continue to just go back to doing what you was going to do. You should also still think of the same precautions that you were using all along, because that's how this kind of started in the first place. Don't forget that. But
Mhm.
again, it takes people to really understand. You have to go to somebody like, you have to go to somewhere. Like, I mean, I spent a couple summers in Sierra Leone, and hearing people talk about, what happened to them there, you kind of get an idea how serious something like this could be for people and what could happen. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that. I mean, people made it. They made this very serious, but I mean, I think that go, go back and just imagine.
It's fun. It's funny you said Sierra Leone. I just did my DNA, and it said I belong to the Mende Temde tribe of Sierra Leone. So, yeah, shout out to my ancestors in Sierra Leone. This concludes this version of Daddy's Matter 2. I want to thank each and every one of you. Lakota Leone, Kathleen Blanco, Dr. Ron C. Osborne Williams, Ernest Moss, Shirley Moss, Get Down Brenda Brown, Will McCrae, and we had a brother on earlier, and also Rob. You know, I want to give him a big shout out. Thank you. Next week, just remember, we're going to go live, Facebook Live. So I want everybody to be ready to be on camera. It's going to be lots of fun. We're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be talking a lot about, like, how do we heal and come together better. And I think daddies need to be at the forefront of the healing message and the healing movement to heal our families and heal the community, you know? So that's my toxic masculinity point. That we need to come together and heal and love. So until then, I want everybody to stay safe and stay tuned in. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel on GoPro Radio, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. And until then, stay safe. And we're going to have a little outro music. And I will see you guys next week on the GoPro Radio Network. See you later.